today I think is going to be even better because the stuff we're going to go through is going to be pretty important for what most of you do, and it's quite stunning stuff. So I'm really thankful that all of you have come out on this beautiful morning, and I know you'd love to do some other things, but this I really think is going to be super important for all the things that you do. And one of the reasons that I'm going to go through a lot of these things today is because there's so many changes and there's so many non-factual reports of what has happened, what's going to happen, and what you can and can't do, that I thought we'd go through those things. And as always, please ask questions during. You don't have to wait until the end, although we will have a question and answer session at the end. So you can write things and then we can go through them then. But if you have something in the moment, don't be afraid just to raise your hand and speak up and let me know what your question is at that time. So I thought I'd start with asking you guys what you think about this statement. True or false? A smaller, more relevant and engaged audience is more valuable to an organization than a larger, less engaged one. How many people think this is true or false? True first? How many think it's true? Hands up? Okay. How many think it's false? All right. So that means you understand Facebook. The fundamental change, which is going on all throughout social media, even though Facebook and Instagram, of course, Instagram is owned by Facebook, so Facebook and Instagram have become basically one company. Even though they're run separately, they have become one company when it comes to how they use their APIs and what you can do and can't do in their platforms. So they're going small. Facebook and Instagram are going small, which means that the days of enormous reach, numbers that are pretty crazy, viral things, they're not over, but they're mostly over. And we're going to go through a lot of those things later. But the most important thing is that everything is changing. Nothing's staying the same, and it will affect every single service on Facebook and Instagram. And the other companies are also following suit. So it's not just a Facebook and Instagram issue. The other platforms are also doing this, but they haven't really stated exactly what they're going to do yet. But this will affect. Before, when Facebook went out with statements, public statements, they say it might, it may, it can. Now, in every single release, they say it will. It will affect all these things. And that's quite a harsh thing coming from Facebook, because throughout the years, soon 15 years, they've been very vague in their statements about what's going on in their platforms. They haven't been able to really decide how they're going to publicly announce things. Now they're very definite and very definitive in how they do these things. It will is the new word for Facebook. Here, I'm going to bring up another thing, and this is, of course, I think it's the biggest paper in Finland still, right? I think that might be actually the biggest one in the Nordics, come to think of it. And it's a bit, obscure there with Hitler on the front page, but I was doing this yesterday and I was like, all right, everyone thinks of Facebook and Google as the new Hitlers of the world. At least that's how it's been reporting, these evil entities. So I thought it would be interesting to the people reporting on Facebook having Hitler on their front page and what they're doing. So this is a tool called Ghostery that I use to see what it's one of the tools I use to see what's going on different web-based platforms, to see what's going on with how they track us, how these different companies track us. So we're going to get into, of course, Cambridge Analytica a bit, and this is for me quite devastating when it comes to the credibility of a lot of the companies that are reporting about social media and saying how damaging it is to our democracy. What they're doing is very close to illegal, it's gray zone and all that stuff. And then we go to this website and we see these things, 42 different tracking mechanisms to get information about who you are and what you do. Most of them are actually nothing special. Most of the companies use these. So they're not, giving your information to some obscure group somewhere that are going to really do something harmful with it. But that has been sort of the case when it has come to what Facebook does with all our data, or Instagram, all these other companies. It's harmful. They're selling it to these people that are doing things that we don't know about that's very evil. And if you guys would call these guys today and see what they're doing with this data, they have no idea. They have no idea where this data goes. These are third-party providers that do different things with this data. But the important thing is, and I'm not trying to single out these guys, the New York Times has 400 cookies and 52 third-party apps. So it's all these different providers of news that do exactly the same thing that all these other companies that they report on do. So every single one. I found one company or one organization that has nothing, and it's the Swedish police. They do not have any cookies or third-party applications. So we're going to go through this today. What has happened in social media in the last couple of months, Cambridge Analytica, the details in all the different platforms, and the future of social media coming very shortly, and then a little Q&A. So again, really happy that you're here, and let's get this on the road. So, in order to get into heaven, as you see here, you have to either support Mark Zuckerberg or Christopher Wiley. As most of you know, Christopher Wiley is the whistleblower for Cambridge Analytica, and a lot of the stuff that's happened around this has been reported really poorly, and I think it has to do with this kind of notion that Facebook and Google are these enormous companies that we have very little insight into, and they basically rule, they run our lives. We have our friends there, our families there, our pictures there. It's for most people, they can't even leave Facebook because all their stuff is there. So there was a little movement, to leave Facebook, and it didn't take off. Basically, no one has left Facebook. In fact, they're gaining in the smaller markets where they used to be small. So we don't see any effect with people leaving. But the interesting part here is the official version and the real version, at least the version that I feel is the most appropriate. So the first version, or the official version, of course, is that a lot of things happened actually earlier than Cambridge Analytica. So I'm not sure how many of you have worked for a long time in this industry, but in 2014, 2015, it was still actually possible to still get data from private accounts on Facebook. Meaning every single one person who had a private account, we at Retriever or a company like ours could take data and mine it, aggregate it, and put it into a tool. You could see your posts, what they were about, if you use hashtags, what links, all that stuff. They decided in 2014 sometime, I think it was ended in 2015, to get rid of this. So they realized quite early that privacy issues were important. There was no big scandal at that time. But they realized quite early that giving away private information to a lot of people they didn't know who was collecting that information was not a good thing. They needed to have more control. So they actually shut that down before anyone else. They were the first ones to do it. So a lot of this information about like how much information about your account that has been leaked or gathered or sold to other people is actually quite overstated. Up until 2015, yes, there was a lot of things being given to other people and other organizations. But from then, very little has actually been given to any third party. That's the first thing. Of course, the official version is that Facebook is doing these things because only in the issue or only in the interest of saving your data privacy. Then, of course, we have the issue with GDPR, which is, the law that will be coming on Thursday, which changes a lot of things. And Facebook has basically just said, let's just do this because of those things. The other thing is that they feel they have to save face, basically. They feel that it's so negative, all this bad publicity about what is being done and not done, that they will never be able to give you the truth. at least not a believable truth. So instead, they're just pretty much shutting everything down and leaving it at that. But this is kind of not true because, again, we're comparing this to other platforms. We're seeing what has leaked, what has been stolen, what has been retrieved in a gray zone kind of way. And it's really not true what a lot of these companies that have reported on this have said. Yes, it's true that Cambridge Analytica were one of the companies that sold this data to, among others, Donald Trump's campaign team. That's true. They also sold this data to many others. But most companies have done this for a very, very long time. And as you saw on the page with the Finnish newspaper, continue to do this. They continue to do this. So yes, certain limitations have been brought on, by Facebook because of Cambridge Analytica. But these companies are not stopping because of that. They're just moving to other platforms. They're doing other things. They're going to be in partnerships with other companies and organizations. So it's not like this has created some kind of, okay, everyone's stopping, let's get rid of our third-party apps. They're doing this because they make money. They make money on it, and they provide also, and that's very important to remember, they provide us as users of their websites, their platforms, with a better experience. Relevant advertisements, relevant things that you might like. Those are the things that actually will be more problematic when this comes into full effect. We will be receiving a lot more non-relevant stuff. I've already seen it happen. Anyone else see that a lot of more non-relevant stuff is coming in their feeds? Not only on Facebook, but on Instagram, even on Twitter. Yeah, so one of the things I really have a problem with, of course, is that Obama's campaign did exactly the same thing. They just weren't caught on a big video, and they didn't sort of flaunt it. They didn't tell everyone how successful they were at winning an election. But they basically did the same things. They didn't use Cambridge Analytica, but they basically used the same things. And the interesting parts of this is that a lot of these, the first sort of users of this stuff were universities. So, of course, Cambridge Analytica comes from Cambridge, the university in England, and they did this actually to see from the beginning different kinds of psychological traits in people. So, like if you had a picture of you holding alcohol, were you more or less likely to have certain traits? Were you more aggressive, less aggressive? Did you like certain kinds of political parties? Were you religious? Things like that. So they would match up different things that they found on Facebook and see how it worked. So these were actually the things that were used mostly for the stuff that Cambridge Analytica delivered, or that Facebook actually delivered and Cambridge Analytica used. So that was actually the beginning of this, not to win elections, none of that stuff. It was actually to see quite interesting stuff about psychology and stuff. So one thing they found, which was really cool, is that BMW and Smirnoff apparently have a very close connection. People who like Smirnoff are overrepresented in how they like BMWs. So those kind of things, of course, are very important for marketers. And that was one of the things that you'd be able to find in all this data. Simple data that have a correlating effect. The sort of last part of this, which is, I don't want to discuss this in too far, we could do this for 3-4 hours when it comes to Cambridge Analytica and all that stuff. But the last part is, that's almost a bad joke, but of course is that almost every single website that you go to today that has been criticizing Facebook and Google for being these platforms and search engines that do harm or are not very good for society or have hidden things or have not been truthful, is that they all have and use Google Analytics and they have a Facebook pixel. And for me, that is just hilarious, that they're using services from these companies that report on that they find so reprehensible in many ways. And it's actually really funny. So if you Google some of this stuff, Facebook pixels on different, you'll find really cool stuff and really funny articles on more tech side companies that have done really funny stuff about it. So all these times that are changing are in the details. So most of these things are, of course, changing for the worse, as in you're not going to see the same amount of data. So if you're a Retriever client and you go into the platform, there are going to be certain limitations now on the different social media data. You're going to see less. That doesn't mean it's not going to be as relevant. So all platforms are going to see the same thing, no matter if you're a Retriever client or one of our competitors. So you can't compare 2016's data to 2017's and think that 2018 is going to be more fans or more reach or more likes. So what's going to happen now is that they're going to have to be relevant. And that's what Facebook at least claimed that they want to do. They're afraid that too many of us are going to leave the platform or start using it because they're seeing a decline in engagements. Because we get too much global stuff. Why am I getting stuff from BMW USA? I live in Finland. Why am I getting stuff from Picard? They have no stores within 2 miles of where I live. So all this kind of stuff means that everything is going to get more local. They're trying to make this more local. So Instagram, which is a really interesting platform because, as most of you know, that's where most of the influencers are today. It's going to be a problem with influencers in the coming times. And it has to do with that Instagram is shutting off all open private accounts. So every single person in here who has a normal account will not be in the Instagram APIs anymore. We will not be able to see information, just like Facebook. So what Facebook did a couple of years ago, they're doing to Instagram now. So in December of this year, late December, I think it's 18th of December, they are shutting every private profile down. And for it to be visible, you have to change it to a business account. So basically what Facebook is, or Instagram is becoming is a new Facebook. You're only going to be able to see basically business accounts. So influencers, organizations, companies that are doing something. But you will not be able to see people sharing that stuff. You'll only be able to see the interactions on these companies' platforms. So this is a really good thing, I think, for organizations and companies because the audience is coming back to you. The audience will, if you do things right on your organizational accounts, on the platforms that you use, these people will be coming back to you if you have something to say that's relevant. And I think this has been a big problem for most organizations. They have not been producing content that gives engagement. People are not interested to engage with their banks, or where they buy their TV, or where they go to the gym, because the content has not been a local conversation. It has not been an engaging conversation about what is it makes you feel good, how can we help you in your life. It has all about been what service do we sell, how do we do it, we're the best or second best or the biggest. And that stuff is over. The companies that do that will have no engagements, and because of that, they will lose visibility on all the platforms. So if we go to Instagram and talk about it a little more, this business API opens, of course, then in December, and it's a 10/90 split. So Instagram, well, they haven't really said it officially, but we've done a couple of tests, and it's very clear that this is it. You get 10% reach today. No more on organic stuff on Instagram. But when you get engagements, meaning that you have content that's good enough for people to think that it's, engageable. There's something to engage about. And Instagram does not mean likes for engagements. It's comments. So when they decide to comment and do stuff, that means there's going to happen something, and that thing that happens is that 90%, the remaining 90% gets unleashed. It gets released. So when you get up to a certain amount of interactions, all of a sudden the 90% opens up to you. But that's their new thing, that you don't have good content, you get 10%, and you get 10% forever until people start engaging. If they don't engage, you get 10%. That's just how it works. There's no 12, there's no 18. Could be 12. 10% is a fluid, but it's not going to be 18. It's around 10%. Instagram shopping, anyone use it for their business? Not yet? It just opened a couple of weeks ago, or 2 months ago, I think it is now. So Instagram shopping is live in the Nordics. They opened at the same time in all the Nordics. It's been going really, really well in the US, Brazil, the UK. The results are incredible. I mean, we're talking about like 50% jumps in sales, in engagement, around 20% as a total collective of all the things that are being sold. So this, of course, is a response to Pinterest, because Pinterest has historically been the e-commerce platform where people have been able to sell stuff. But now Instagram is trying to take this over because they have a lot more users. So 1 billion users being able to shop on very sophisticated stuff, and so you should check it out. It's a little handbag that shows up, a little shopping bag that shows up on sponsored links, and of course it will show up how much what the item is called, a link, and how much it costs. Very simple, very effective. Stories. So stories, of course, are the sponsored things. This is the only way, basically, to get engagements on things that are, let's call it, not engageable. So, if you're selling a handbag or doing things like that, of course, that's going to be the only way to do this stuff. Because a lot of people are not going to engage on that stuff. They might find it, beautiful or whatever, but they're not going to have an engaging conversation. So that, of course, goes against what we're saying. So the organic stuff has to be engaging. The sponsor stuff is what it is. But as a whole, the engagement parts are, all the rage. That is where it is today. So we move to Facebook. So if you're basically what Facebook has done and are continuing to do, and these numbers are quite crazy, is that they have removed friends of friends. So today, the things you're going to see are your friends stuff. Friends of friends, then it has to really be really interesting stuff. So a lot of people of your friends have engaged on an article or on something a video or whatever it is. That's the only possibility that your friends' friends are going to see it. Because Facebook is moving to this local, what your friends and family do. That's what they want to go back to. So they've limited these kind of reach numbers. So before you could see 400,000 people have engaged with these things. If you have a lot of followers, that's just not going to happen anymore. They close groups for us as a provider to give to you. So groups are gone. They're still very much alive on the Facebook platforms, but it has to do with that. Since you are private people engaging in groups that have mostly very little business benefit, Facebook has decided, I think, it's private. So that stuff is not going to be, so all the people, again, going back to the BMW stuff, all the people that like BMWs that are part of a group, we're not going to be able to see their stuff. But they can still engage on BMW's different Facebook, their pages. But that means, of course, that BMW, in order to understand and see these people, they have to make better content. They have to create better content so people want to be and engage on their own pages and don't want to stay in a group. So for me, I think this is actually really good. Events have been closed down. And basically what that means is just that there's no one that can aggregate third-party apps that you could before. I mean, the events are still there. When you go to an event or you tag someone or you check in somewhere, that used to be able to be extracted and shown somewhere. That is not available anymore. So, you and your friends can see it, but we as a provider cannot see it. So these are, two different things. Yeah. Any questions about Facebook there? Yeah. All right. So we haven't talked much about LinkedIn, but not many of you know it. But there was something called topic data for a couple of years ago, and basically what it was anonymized data. And then they started with Facebook, but of course, as you know, after everything of all these things started to happen, Facebook shut it down, and LinkedIn picked it up. So LinkedIn has anonymized data of all the different accounts on the entire platform, which is I think almost 600 million now. So it means that you can great data about all these things, and you'll never know who that person is. You know if they're male or female. You'll know what age group they are. You know where they're located geographical wise, and you know what they like, what they don't like, what they engage on, all these things. But it's very clear that even LinkedIn thinks this is too small part of their business, so they're getting rid of it. They will be shutting this down in the coming months. Also, one of those things that sadly is one of those overreaction. I mean, here we're talking about totally anonymized data. I think one of the reasons they're doing this is because by doing certain kind of um, um, gerrymandering, you can you can get certain information that maybe you shouldn't be able to get, and that's this little Cambridge Analytica ghost speaking on their shoulder, little devil there saying, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." So they're more scared about it. It's a very small part of the business, so because of that, they're getting rid of it. Cloud Score. Any of you guys use it? Heard of it? Yeah, couple. Anyway, so Cloud Score was an aggregating tool for all your different social media platforms. So if you're on Twitter, you had a blog, you were on Facebook and Instagram, you would have an aggregated score of anything from 0 to 100. 20 to 25 was easier to get than 30 to 35, so it was an incremental change upwards. The average, I think, in Finland was 22. So people would have like an influencer minimum of like 50. If you had 50, you were an influencer, depending on where you were, or 60, depending on all these things. And of course, like presidents, people in marketing, stuff like that would have anywhere from like 75 up to 100. And that is gone as well. Because of GDPR, Clout decided to shut down the service because they feel that it also is one of those things. You can find out too much about who is an influencer, which means they could be an influencer in politics. So we're always thinking about ourselves. Well, that's not a bad thing maybe in Helsinki in Finland, or in Stockholm, Sweden, where I live, or somewhere else. But it could be a problem in Karachi in Pakistan, or it could be a problem in Syria, where you could find influencers that are political, and because of that, you can find out who they are, and evil people, bad people can do something with that information. So it doesn't have to do with per se that this was a malicious thing. In fact, the opposite. It was very good. But they're shutting it down because of things that can be done in a bad way, because of just the general things that can be done with these things. So that's kind of sad, but there are good things, some really good things. So Snapchat. Snapchat, many companies have overlooked it, mostly because they feel it's a platform for so-called young people. But a lot of companies, of course, have that as a big group within their marketing or communication. And these young people, of course, will not be young forever. So Snapchat is becoming more and more important. It's growing, even though it's not growing as quickly as they would hope. And what they're doing is actually the opposite of everyone else. They're opening up their demographics, but only per account. So when you have a Snapchat account, you can see all the demographics. Who has my stuff reached? My Snap, who did it go to? Was it women? Was it men? What ages? Where do they live? What are their interests? All that stuff has opened up in Snapchat. So Snapchat is a very interesting channel. We're looking at it now to have some kind of version in our tool where you can see these different stuff. But of course, again, it's not a general thing about on all of Snapchat. It's on your accounts, the accounts that you administrate. Those will have very good demographic data. So that's a really cool thing. And again, The other platforms are not shutting down that data when you're an administrator. So you can still see, reach, you can still see engagement rates, demographics on Facebook and Instagram. So all that stuff is still there. We're talking about, of course, for everything. If you look for content-based stuff on Facebook and Instagram, you won't be able to see that anymore on the whole platform. What you will still be able to do, of course, is on the accounts that you administrate and own, no problem. All that stuff will still be there. Yeah, so one of the things that really all the platforms are doing is they're seeing drops in engagements because people are not posting good content. Doesn't make a difference if it's private accounts or business accounts. Most importantly for you guys, of course, and for me, is that the business accounts have been seeing dropping rates for a lot of companies and organizations, and has to do with that they have not understood how the algorithms have changed. So video is number one. All these companies, all the platforms have decided that they see the most amount of engagements, and because of that, they've said video is number one. So because video is number one, you either use video or you don't get the most engagements and reach. So they're changing the algorithms to make all you guys that work within social media to change you, to force your behaviors to make a better experience for the people on the platform. So you might not like using videos, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you will not be very successful in what you do. So it's really important to sort of remember this, that they didn't do this because they wanted to do it. They did it really to help us, but they had to force us to do it. That's kind of how I see it. They couldn't tell us enough. I couldn't tell you guys enough. So they did it almost by force and said, this is what we're going to do. Video is number one, and after that comes pictures, text is third, and just a word or a hashtag comes last. So at the bottom here, we're talking about this local stuff and absolute numbers. So numbers will still count, but they will be relevant numbers. So when you do something, when you share content and you get engagements on that, again, you will not be able to compare it to last year's numbers because you're doing a very different kind of comparison. What you will be having, though, is that you know that these people are much more relevant to your business, because that's how the algorithms work. So before, if you were getting 400 likes, 22 comments, 2 shares, that stuff will look, the likes will be way down. But hopefully the comments and the shares will be up, because they're seeing that you are doing your job and sharing more engaging content. And the more you do this, the more you get benefited, the more you get rewarded, because that's how the new algorithms work. And it's really cool to see how some organizations who used to get really nothing have understood this, and instead of just posting these pictures, I know this bank that I did some work with, and their biggest post ever was a cat, the cat meme that just sort of moved a little, did something, and I actually told them to do this as a joke because they're not doing, they're a bank. What do they have to do with cats? Of course, nothing. But they did it because it was out of their comfort zone, and I wanted to show them how simple it was to get interactions. And the interactions were actually quite good. They were actually talking about the bank, that they actually liked the bank, that they thought that it was cool that they would do something out of their comfort zone, that the bank that usually only talks about, how great they are and how much they do for society and all that stuff. For once, they were human and wanted to. So they actually started engaging in a conversation. Of course, I don't think you should share cat memes or GIFs or whatever you're doing, or videos, just to get engagements, because that's not going to work in the long run. But it is symptomatic to understand how the algorithms work, that when you do these things, you will get more engagements. So if you do 20 cat videos, that will not work. But if you do one off or something similar, you will see how it works, just to do an A/B testing of what is actually going on. So it's just one of those things. Yeah. Any questions? No? All right, so now we're going into sort of the future. A lot of these things are already taking place, but they're going to be rapidly increasing. And the first one is this being real. Uh, Super high quality productions done once a month with a very general audience won't work. All companies and organizations are going to have to be real. So just as we're trying to be real, I'm trying to be real here today. When you meet your friend, when you talk to your cousin, we have real conversations. That is what's going to have to happen on social media for an organization to be successful. If you don't get personal, if you don't have a conversation, you will see zero, and I mean almost zero engagements and reach. I've seen companies that have 1% reach nowadays on Facebook. 1%. So, it really has decreased in quite crazy ways. Of course, you can buy your way into reach, but you will still not get, you're not buying engagements. So you really have to do that stuff. So that's really the first things, and that will be for every single platform. The other thing that really is important is a lot of companies and organizations are not going to be interesting for a lot of people. So you're going to have to use influencers. A lot of people are not going to think it's really interesting to have a CEO of a company talk about their products. They're going to have a third party talk about them. Someone who really likes their products and uses their products, not someone that is making money off of it. Even though influencers are making money off of it, a lot of them actually already like these products or are actually already using that product. It's one of the reasons a lot of these companies and organizations go to these people. They're already somehow in the business. They're somehow already famous or well respected. And a big thing that is changing is that before companies would use these influencers for a couple of weeks, one campaign. Now they're tied to the brand for years. We want you to be our spokesperson. We want you to be our number one influencers for 2 years. And why they're doing that is they realize that this person actually is very good for their brands. So why should they only use them for a couple of weeks or one campaign or whatever it is? So that's the big thing that's changing. And whatever company and whichever organization starts doing this first or starts investing in this is going to be very successful. So 5% of, this is US figures from 2017. In 2017, 5% of the budgets on Fortune 500 companies went to influencers. But as you see here, in a couple of years, it looks to be tripled. So when 2020 comes around, it's going to be $10 billion industry. So this is not about, is it good or bad? It is necessary. Then what you pay influencers and what kind of, many influencers might not want to actually even have money because you're trying to save lives, like cancer research. Maybe those kind of influencers want to do it because they lost their mother in cancer, so they're not going to charge you anything. So it's not only about money, but it has to be about, you are not, as an organization, often the best person or people to spread your word. So look at who can we have a partnership with? How can they help us in spreading what we really want to give to people? That's really important to remember. But I think a lot of people just think about, oh, they're bought, they're paid for. Yeah, but a lot of people are not, or they're paid very little. And what they do is actually very good stuff. So it's something really to remember. A lot of companies are not doing video because of one single thing. They don't think they have the resources, yet they have a social media department with 3 people and a communication officers and all that. And they'll do it for other things, but they don't want to do it for social media. The other thing is they don't like to be in front of camera. That's fine. You don't have to be in front of camera. Let the influencer be in front of a camera. All you have to do is produce the content. So you know what your products are. You know what your company stands for. You know the things that you want to say. Let your influencer say those things. Let them use their YouTube channel or their Instagram stories, whatever it is you want to do. But use video, because that's going to really be the big difference. So again, Pinterest is something that most organizations don't use. It's an e-commerce channel, has been for a long time. So if you're selling something online, you're going to be using Pinterest. If you're not doing, you're not selling anything. Very simple is how it works. It's worked for, I'd say, the last 5 years this way. It's an incredibly effective channel. And again, they're having competition now from Instagram. It's going to be really exciting to see how this works in the coming year. But most and foremost is that if you're not using Pinterest, do it. Do some testing and really see how it works. It's a really different kind of social media platform, but it's incredibly effective. Last year when I was in San Diego at this, or this year actually, when I was in San Diego a couple months ago, I saw some crazy stats. It's something like 83% of everyone who is on Pinterest bought something on the platform. It's pretty crazy. 83% have bought something on the platform. And 55%, I think, are recurring customers to things. So if you're looking to sell something, not only talk about a message, Pinterest is the place to be. Here I found something really cool, and it's Mike Stelzner, who's is a really influential social media guy. Lives in the U.S. on the West Coast, I think it's San Diego, and he made this, which I think is really cool. We're going to send this out to you, so you're welcome to take pictures, but just so you know, we're going to send this presentation to all of you who are here today. But I think top right is really where you guys should be thinking and looking. We've been about numbers too long. Numbers matter, but they have to be relevant numbers. So many, even of the clients that we help in social media, they look so much to absolute statistics, to absolute numbers. So it's 800, or if it's 800 now, it has to be 900 in a couple of weeks, because that's the only way to measure what you're doing, instead of actually putting into, have I actually gotten more members? So yeah, I'm not getting as many likes, but I actually got more members than I did in the last period, or I had more sales, or I had more clicks on my website. Other things that are important to what it is you do. So many people have been focusing on likes and comments that they've actually stopped measuring the other things that are important to their business or to whatever it is they do. So we shouldn't stop measuring, but be much more careful and more relevant in why we measure things and how we measure them. We have to be able to have a correlation with something else than just these like numbers that I have for a long time. And fans as well. People are chasing fans, and then they're creating, quite honestly, very average content. So you have all these people that are actually following your page, and then what do? You spread very average content, and these people just sit there. So you have these thousands, or for some companies even millions, of fans, and they're basically not doing anything. They're not engaging with you. And this is, of course, the reason, again, why these platforms are changing the way they do business. Yeah. Another thing that we have to remember, and I think this is one of the last things, is that even though these platforms are going local, so all this global stuff is going to go away, it's going to be much more local, you're still competing against a lot more organizations than before. Everyone's on social media in one way or another, so no matter what industry you're in, basically, unless you're basically a monopoly or oligopoly, those things are going to make it very difficult out of a competitive wise. So you're going to have more competitors out there. There's only so much room on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all the others. So if you had 5 competitors today and you have 10 tomorrow, you're all fighting over the same space. So if you're fighting over the same space, there's one thing, of course, that can make you stand out. Great content, which we've already talked about 20 times. I hope you understood that now. Video, but also the sponsored stuff. Sponsored stuff, of course, is promoted and valued by these companies because that's how they make their money. Facebook didn't become one of the biggest companies in the world by not making money. They make money, and because they're making money off something that you are doing on their platform, because of that, they're going to promote you. But you have to do it in a good way and with good content. So all these things interact. So remember that, all those things together. Yeah, I think we're mostly done. I had some more things in my head, but let's see if we have some questions or some feedback or some comments. Yeah.
when we're talking about these influencers, so how do you feel about influencers that come from inside the company? Because you talk about the content has to be authentic.
Yeah.
So is it seen as authentic if they are like the local spokespersons?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. You're from IBM, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I know where the IBMer is going here. So IBM actually were a company that didn't actually used to have corporate social media accounts. They used to use people within IBM to spread content. You know, this I'm an IBMer was actually how they did social media stuff. They would have, you know, I'm not sure if it was regional or whatever, but they would have people that would spread content, and it was very effective. Now they have social media accounts like
But
everyone
we're
else.
still doing it.
Yep, but they're still doing it. So yes, it's incredibly effective. The problem is that in most companies and organizations, is that it's either top ordered, you know, from the top down, and so it's not natural. No one feels natural about doing it. It's often scripted. Everyone share this. Everyone, you know, we have a new product out. Let's everyone share it. And the third thing is that people don't really. You can almost feel it in the way they post it. That they don't really. They're not really caring for it. You can almost feel that. Oh, her boss made her do this. And that's the problem with social media today, that it's not authentic. And so many people can feel it. I mean, how authentic would it be if I spread on my private account some really cool video that Retriever, like, you know, spent lots of money doing out somewhere, and then I go, ooh, look at what we did. Most of the time, that's going to be people, if I don't do it quite often. You know, if I just do it one off here and there, it just doesn't come off as very authentic. And people are starting to see through that. So I don't know how many of you have shared your business stuff, but at least for me, when I share my business stuff, it doesn't get a lot of traction. And it probably has to do with that I'm not friends with a lot of people that work in my industry or that have interest in exactly the things I'm doing, because we're doing it from a corporate view. I'm not talking so much about Facebook for the private person. If I would do that, of course, I would get a lot more interaction. So yes, for me, it's absolutely the number one thing. It doesn't make a difference if they're already IBMers or paid influencers. The important part for me is that it's authentic, and it's very clear that this works. And IBM, I think, is one of the good examples that it actually did work. It was something like, I saw some number, it was like 50,000 influencers within the IBM or something like that at one point on social media. And they got crazy results with it. So, great question, great comment. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, in the videos, have you seen that there's a difference if there's sound or not?
Well, you know, so of course the default now is no sound. So people sometimes when they put on the sound, they're like, why isn't it working? But just as you're saying, people will sometimes have no sound. But I saw some stats that if you have sound, it's like 3 or 4 times more likely to get engagements on it. And the same with Facebook Live. So if you do Facebook Live, it's 6 times more successful than if you would do it as a sponsored post. So those things also come into mind. All these, you know, the live stuff is really important as well. Yeah, anyone else? Mika?
Well, how about when you have videos? Usually nowadays, the best ones at least have a text below that. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that really important or not?
No. It's not important, at least how Facebook or Instagram or anyone else, or for that reason, LinkedIn, for that matter, LinkedIn. It's not how they categorize you. So you don't get punished for it because it's embedded into the video. But if you write texts are not well liked. So if it's an amendment to a text, that stuff is not liked at all. So there's one thing on Instagram actually where it even hurts you. So if I think they actually took it away now, but I'm not sure. I have to check it. But so if you posted something on Instagram and then you altered the Instagram the post, you would actually get less reach. They're seeing as that you're trying to fix it, and they want it to be authentic and real and posted. So anything that's amended would actually get a drop in reach. They would automatically drop it by a certain percentage. So all kinds of amendments and stuff like that. But getting back to that stuff, no, it won't. It won't. Like of course, if it's that much text, people are not going to read it. So if it's just an explanation of to what it is, then it doesn't make a difference. I haven't seen any stats on what's better or worse. Yes.
Just to continue that, I guess there might be some cultural differences because in Finland we are used to look all the TV series or the movies with subtitles, and it's not so uncommon in Finland.
Oh, is that what you meant?
Yeah,
subtitles.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay, subtitles. No,
Yeah.
subtitles is great.
Yeah.
Actually, Retriever did a thing on the political parties in Sweden, and one of the things we saw was that the Swedish Democrats, they use English in some of their campaign videos, and then it's Swedish, but then they text it in English. So, people that haven't learned Swedish, people that are in different countries, so they already understand that our audience is not only native Swedish speakers, we're also immigrants, people that are from countries around that don't understand Swedish, and we want to reach them too. So they understand immediately, and then they put subtitles. So yeah, that's great that you said that, because now I understand what he meant. So no, subtitles will not hurt you in other ways, at least in the API stuff, and it will definitely help you in engagements and reach, because that's exactly, of course, more people are going to be able to understand the content. So great question. Yes?
Well, I suppose when you make videos, you need to be very compact. Like 10 minutes is is an eternity, and I mean, what's an optimum length for? Let's say if you want to distribute some B2B videos.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of twist the question around. When you say that, so video content has to be limited, depends, of course, what you're trying to do. So certain people, of course, are trying to create almost like mini episodes. They know that it takes quite a lot of effort to make a good content in 40 seconds. So why not let's do like a cool interview with someone that my followers or the people in my audience, I think, will appreciate. And instead of what they will do is a short 5-minute or 3-minute video, instead of doing the 30-second really cool stuff. But those are, of course, different things. Depends who am I trying to reach and why, and how am I doing it. So I wouldn't say that there's any numbers supporting. There are, of course, always numbers. Like the most optimal video is 24.2 seconds long in Finland. In Sweden, it's 28.4 seconds. But I wouldn't say it has so much to do with that. That is what's actually gonna, make or break what you're trying to do. It has to do with what you're actually trying to do. Who am I trying to reach, and how am I trying to do it? So yes, shorter videos is great because, of course, people are impatient. So I actually have a good example. There was a video last night that I saw, and it's a person of mine that I know in the U.S. And I wasn't rude, but I said the person hadn't seen the whole video, and it actually has to do with a restaurant in America. That the actual concept of the restaurant is that they're rude. They are rude. The waitresses are rude to the people ordering. That is the concept of the restaurant. So this woman went into a rant. She became very angry about that this waitress should be fired, but she was so, abusive to her clients. And I said, if you watched another 20 seconds instead of shutting it off after 30 seconds, you would have seen that this is the business idea of this company, and they actually talk about it in the video. But people are very quick to, their reactions. They can't stand watching something for more than 22 seconds. And because of that, of course, she went into a long rant, and then it was a whole debate going, people for or against firing her, and all this stuff. So it actually has to do with a lot of those things, What are you trying to do, and who are you? Yeah.
Yeah, because I sometimes watch these TED Talks, and I actually find myself going to the script pretty fast because I want to see where the actual thing comes, in the speech. So, when browsing through all these talks in the evening before going to bed, like, okay, I don't have time to watch all these things, so I just want to spot the interesting parts, and then I go to the script and, blah 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 browse through the
Yeah.
material.
Yeah, no, so I think you almost answered your own question. You know, like on TED Talks, wouldn't it be better that they had it, you know, segmented?
Yeah.
You know, that here's 2 minutes about this, here's 2 minutes about that, instead of, you know, they could do a better job. So a lot of these almost editorial kind of stuff done on social media is often done because they're just shooting it, they edit it quickly, and then they put it out. But if they would edit it even more into you know, small segments, it would be amazing, because you would be able to find your stuff you're looking for. So absolutely. So I have no, you know, definitive answer. I think it has all to do with what you're trying to do and how to accomplish it. But again, there are the numbers, and if you want, I can try to send them to you when it comes to, like, you know, the best when it comes to just the averages. So absolutely. Anyone else? No? All right. Thank you so much for coming out. Really appreciate it. I love doing these things, and be sure to contact me or any of your account people here in Finland, or Mika. Be happy to talk to you more about these things. I'll be here afterwards. So I know Mika's going to have a few words, but really, guys, everything's changing now. Be on top of things, because you're really going to get value for that time. You're really going to be first movers.